All right. Thank you guys very much for joining. Today we're going to talk about overcoming challenges and overcoming objections. And so I want to kind of start and make this a real open and informal. What's a challenge or an objection that you have had or that you think you're going to have, and you want to know how to overcome that? Money? Okay. Lowell brought up the objection of money, that they can't afford it, right? Or something like that. Okay. Well, that happens a lot. What I normally do with my presenting and closing is I'll give them the 5 benefits of our policies. I'll typically give them 3 options and ask them which one is in their best interest, or which one do they feel most comfortable paying for the rest of their life. And you notice how I word those questions. I don't word them as in, how much do you want to buy? You know, it's just a less formal, less threatening way of getting a yes. And so Lowell brings up the question of money, and you will get that a lot. Typically during the fact-finding process, this will prevent a money issue down the road. During my 4-step appointment process, during the fact-finding portion, I'm finding out what their budget is. For instance, Tim and I were out last Thursday, and the gentleman said, my budget is $25 a month, which is a really low budget, and that's obviously very rare that the budget will be that low. But we sold him $26 a month of life, and he was happy with that. I think I gave him options at probably 22, 26, and 30, something like that. I give them options, and I normally know what they're going to choose. But even if we get to the end of the appointment and they say, okay, I said $25, but you know the only option I can give them is, say I gave them 26, 30, and 35, and they say, well, I'm not comfortable with any of those. Okay, what are you comfortable with? There's a number that you're comfortable paying for the rest of your life. What's that number? And so our goal is to get that number out of them. And normally, not always, but normally there is a figure that they can affordably they feel comfortable affording and spending each month for that insurance. And so by fact-finding thoroughly, and by asking what their budget is, and by, if you're getting sometimes that's one thing we're going to talk about today, is what the difference between an objection is, and what the difference between a complaint is. And those are two different scenarios that you run into. An objection is something that we need to overcome to make the sale. A complaint, it's not something that we need to overcome. It's just some negative feedback that they're giving us that doesn't apply to us making the sale or not. And so Lowell's first objection was overcoming money. We do that by fact-finding, finding out what their budget is, and if they say, well, I can't afford that, well, how much can you comfortably afford? There's a number you can comfortably afford. What is it? You're just asking questions. Okay, what's the next challenge or objection that we have? So the first one was money. Okay, don't all jump on the phone at once. What's a challenge or an objection that people have? Or that you have?
Pray about it. Don't make a decision.
Okay, there we go. I actually get that a lot. Matt said that he gets some people say, I want to pray about it before I make a decision. Okay, let's pray about it. I've actually prayed with them and then said, okay, I'm sure you feel comfortable making a decision now, right? Or if they say, well, me and my wife we need to pray about it. Okay. Well, I'm going to do this. I've got to make a phone call. I'm going to step outside. I'm going to make that phone call. I'm going to give you guys a chance to pray and talk. I'll be in 4 or 5 minutes, and then I'll get your decision when I come back in. Most agents are scared or feel fearful or not aggressive enough to say those kinds of things or do those kinds of things. But those are the things that you have to do to get a yes or to get them to make a decision. That's a great one. That happens a lot. Sometimes they'll even say, well, I don't need insurance, I have assurance. which is great. But our faith, unfortunately, if we pass away, isn't going to cover our burial and final expenses. So that's a good one. Money, I need to pray about it. That's a good one. What's next?
One-leggeds.
Okay.
And if you step outside and you go step back in and the door's locked, you know
Yeah.
what your answer is.
I haven't had that happen, but I'm breaking down the door. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, Matt brought up another one where you have a one-legged appointment, and they need to make a decision. And these can be tough. There's some ways around it, but this can be one of the tougher objections or challenges to overcome. I had a story comes to mind. Ted and I were in Rockaway Beach, Merriam Woods, down near Forsyth, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the lady said, I asked her to make a decision, and she said, well, my daughter's the one that wants me to get this, so I need to know what she wants me to do before I can make a decision. I said, okay, call your daughter. Get her on the phone, tell her what the options are, and ask her which one she wants you to do. So I even offered for us to go outside. We never left, and she just went and got her phone and called her daughter, and she stood in the kitchen and talked to her daughter, and I could hear the daughter say, she said something about, well, just tell him you want to think about it, or something like that. And I had already given her my think about it, a close or overcoming of that objection, and so she knew that wasn't going to fly. But so the daughter, she said, well, I'd like to have $50,000, and I already thought that was the option she was going to go with anyway. So she got off the phone. She said, okay, she wants me to have $50,000. I said, okay, so we want to go with that option, correct? She said, yeah. So we moved forward. That's a tough one to overcome, one-legged. But you either want to make sure that all the deciding parties are there, or you want to get them present via phone or text or whatever. You want to try to overcome that as best as possible. If there's a husband and wife, you generally want to meet with both of them if you can. So that's something to always keep in mind, is one-legged appointments can be tough to overcome. Okay, so we've had money. Somebody wants to pray about it. It's a one-legged appointment. What's next? I'll go over the thing that you will run into the most, which is, I want to think about it. Or can I call you back? That is the most common objection we will get, or challenge we will get in the insurance business, is I want to think about it, or can I call you back? And what I do is, and I learned this from Brian Tracy from The Art of Closing the Sale about 5 years ago, and he says he would go door to door, house to house, he would present, and he would scaredly just ask after he warmed up and he fact-finded and he presented his option and the price. He said he would kind of chokingly say, okay, what do you want to do now? Well, that's not a way to, ask for the business or get a yes. So then he left thinking that everyone was always going to think about it and actually call him and make the sale. So he had hundreds of people waiting to say yes, and his business was going to boom. Well, he learned a few months in that no one ever called him back, and that they really didn't think about it after he left. And it was just a polite customer way of saying goodbye forever. We will never speak again.
You didn't do enough.
Exactly. And so what he does, and he did this on one appointment, and he has always done it, and he trained his all of his agents to do the exact same thing, all of his salespeople. And he would make the sell. He would present. He would say, okay, what do you want to do now? And they would say, I want to think about it. I'll call you back. And he would say, sir, I don't do callbacks. You have all the information you need to make an informed decision today. Why don't you just take it? He'd say, hey, you need it, you want it, you can afford it. Why don't you just take it? And the guy actually said, well, if you don't make callbacks, then I guess I have to take it. And so it worked, and he made the sale. And so actually, I've got a true life scenario for that. I had a lady, another agent and I were out seeing her a couple years ago, and it was going to be, she had a lot of insurance. We were bundling and combining all of her insurance, and we were going to save her some money. It was going to be about $300 a month of final expense insurance, which at 115% is a very, very large commission, especially with a 9-month advance. And so she said, well, it's just a lot. This is a big decision. It's a lot of money. I don't want to make a decision today. And I looked at the agent, and he's starting to pack up his stuff, and I'm like, what's this dude doing? That's not how we handle this. So I looked at the lady and I said, ma'am, unfortunately, we have a personal rule that we do not do callbacks. You have all the information that you need to make an informed decision. You need it, you want it, and you can obviously afford it. So I recommend that you take it. She sat there, she thought for a second. She said, well, if you can't come back, then I guess I have to take it. And almost word for word like the CD. And the agent looked at me with this crazy smile and thought, what in the world just happened? Because when I was saying that, he's looking at me like, oh no, we just blew a $4,000 sale. And so we took the application, we collected a check, and she thanked us for being there and thanked us for helping her. Most of the time, we are putting people in a better situation. Well, all the time we're doing that, but most of the time we're able to save them money. We're always putting them in a better situation. We're giving them a local agent that they need. We're giving them a better type of coverage. Whatever the scenario is, they need it or they already have it. They want it or they already have it. And they can afford it because they're already paying for it or they've told us they can afford it. And so it makes sense for us to, that takes a lot of guts, but every agent needs to ask for the order on the first sale and learn to not accept callbacks. Because what I've learned, the numbers behind that is that 90+% of the people that, I'd say closer to 95% of the people that you see that say, I'm thinking it over and I'll call you back, 90 to 95% never actually think about it, or they never actually call you back. But by doing that close, you're going to actually I get 50 to 75% of them, if not more than that, probably 60, 70, 80% of them that are thinking about it. I get them to make a decision and I actually get the sale. So I would rather a chance at 60 to 70% than a chance at 5%. And so by doing it, I'm making more sales more often than letting them thinking about it and only getting 5 to 10% later on. Yes, it takes a lot of guts, and you can't have any fear, and you've got to do it in a polite, respectful, aggressive, direct way. But if you do it properly, it can and will work. So that's something that we did. Ted and I have done it. I don't know if have we done that one yet?
We haven't had that. No, we haven't.
We haven't had that scenario. They've all wanted to buy anyway, but because we've done a great job of warming up and fact finding and presenting, so we just expect them to make a decision. But so it works. That's something I would add to your tool bag and your portfolio of closes and ways to get the sale. Okay, so we went over people that have money issues. They want to pray about it. They're one-legged, or they want to think about it or call back.
And if they tell you no, then you're not wasting your time chasing them down.
Exactly. I've always lived by the motto, some will, some won't.
So what?
So what? Next. And so we are eliminating the people that are going to bog us down and kill our time and that we're going to think about it. We're clearing our mind and we're focusing on the next individual. Because chances are the people that are wasting our time and thinking about aren't going to make a decision anyway. So.
Actually, we did tell him that I'd call him back, and I did, and he still needs a few months to think about it.
Yeah, and he's one of those people that are going to permanently think about it and permanently shop and are never actually going to make a decision. They just like to think that they are looking at purchasing life insurance. But there's some people that are permanent shoppers and will never make a decision. I'd rather get them as a client or let them move on to waste somebody else's time. Exactly. Okay, what's another challenge or objection? What's something we've done that we've overcame that?
With Mr. Belk,
This
That
is
was-
Tom Miller speaking right
that
now.
was just like that was just a cold call. When we got there, I'd asked him to have his current policy available. When we got there, he'd forgotten to get it out. And Cody asked him where it was, and he said he didn't know. And then Cody said, if you did know where it was, where would it be? And, well, it would be in this filing cabinet. And then he said, well, just check and see if it's in there. And for an inexperienced guy like me, I don't know if I would have pursued those steps. And then later on, again, we made the phone call, and Forrester's
Hang on, let's talk about the first one first, because
Okay.
that's a really good example. The gentleman said, I don't know what my policy is, and I really don't want to get up to get it, just like Tom said. Well, the average age would just be like, okay, well, what do you know about it? Well, by twisting the question, I'm from the school of thought that you can ask someone the same thing over and over as long as you ask them in a different way. And so in this instance, he said, I don't know where it is, and I don't want to look for it. Well, if you did know where it was, or you could remember where it was last, where would it be? And that, for some reason, made him think, oh, well, it's probably in my filing cabinet. Well, if it's probably in there, I need it. Get up and grab it for me. At least look for me if you don't mind. And he did. And he got the policy, and without the policy, we would not have been able to make the sale. So that's one example of getting people to do things they don't want to do by asking them in creative ways and by nudging them to do so. So what was the second part you were going to mention? Same guy, same house,
Same
out in
guy.
Joplin.
And this isn't really, well, I guess it is overcoming objection. We called Forrester's, and they put him at a different rating than what.
Yeah,
we
instead
had
of
him
instead
at.
of offering him the level, they noticed an inhaler that he had used about over 3 years ago for pneumonia. So they offered him graded.
So they offered him graded, and that was way out of his price range. He wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
And then Cody said, well, let's call the pharmacy. So we called the pharmacy and found out, in fact, he hadn't had this inhaler for over 2.5, 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to use that information to go ahead and get Forrester's to change their mind,
Yeah.
which
The average agent will just see the objection and think the insurance company is not going to change their mind, so I guess I just have to sell the extra 50% of premium. Well, what we did is they said we will not issue the case at that level day one coverage because he was prescribed Combivent over three years ago. So I said, okay. I just got off the phone with Forrester's. We called I told him to call the pharmacy. We got the pharmacy on the phone, and I told him what to ask. And he asked them, when was the last time I was prescribed Combivent? And it was like March of 2013 or 2012 or something like that. It was a long time ago. And so I said, okay. And then they didn't know what it was prescribed for. So then we had him call his doctor and actually get a letter from his doctor stating that that Combivent was prescribed over 3 years ago for a temporary case of pneumonia, and then he did not have COPD. And by doing that, we got them to change their mind and issue it at level and made Tom $1,000 in his first couple days by doing that. So that comes back to the whole goal in this is, and the reason we're doing this is to get you to think of creative ways to jump over walls, break through walls, and overcome objections that clients have. If we do those things, we make the sale. I've got one I want to mention real quick. And Tim, I'm going to mention our story with Miss Sarah that we I'll just mention her first name because we are recording this, but it was with Sarah, and Tim had emailed her and had set an appointment. Well, we show up, we door knock, we end up in her living room. Her mom goes to get her, and she comes down and says, I didn't set an appointment with you. And Tim said, well, I emailed you the time. And she said, well, I never agreed. And so we showed up and we were there, and so I obviously, while she was being extremely defensive and upset and saying that I never let people in my house, it's just not something I do. It's not a good habit for me to get into. Nowadays, it's not a good thing to do. I was just agreeing with them, agreeing with her. Right, you're exactly right, ma'am. I apologize. Just continue to agree with her, and just tried to win her over. Well, slowly I was able to win her over, and say, well, if you don't mind, we're already here. Let's at least give you a quote real quick, And so she said, okay. I said, I apologize that we're here, and the way we showed up. It'll never happen again. But since we're already here, and we're going through this awkward moment together, let's at least give you a free quote, And so she agreed, and we did, and we realized that she was wanting insurance on her husband, and she wasn't going to tell him about it, which is obviously not something we can do. We can't sell insurance on someone that has no clue that they're buying it on the individual, so that would have been illegal. So we obviously did not do that. But we moved on to her mom. I said, well, what's your mom have for coverage? Well, she had $10,000 and she was overpaying, and she had a lot of cash built up and that kind of thing. So we were able to transition and actually sell the mother, and the new agent was able to make $1,000, all from, instead of being confrontational with the lady that was upset with us, I agreed with her. I may have threw the agent under the bus a little, just so that she felt good about the situation, like that we did wrong and that we were sorry. And we made the sale. We moved on, we gave her a free quote, and we made the sale. And so that's another example of overcoming barriers, walls, challenges, and actually overcoming objections that do come up on a daily basis as an insurance agent. Okay.
Do you feel like when you read people's policies, when you see them, do you see a lot where they think it's one particular type and it's something totally different than what they're thinking?
That can happen. Unfortunately, there are agents in the insurance business that will tell them that the price is never going to change, and then it's like a 5-year term or a term to age 80, or the price goes up every year, or when they hit age 80 the price goes up. And so if you just do your due diligence and you get them to find their policy, and you inspect that policy and obviously review it, sometimes they're in a great situation and we cannot put them in a better situation. That obviously does happen. But if we do our due diligence and we find out, like Lowell said, we just look at their policy, sometimes, more times than not, we can actually put them in a better situation and do them a service. Okay, what's another challenge and objection? We got a few more minutes. I want to answer one more challenge and objection. Anything that comes to mind that is a barrier that you have? Or let's do this. We've talked about a lot of in-person stuff. What about, what's a barrier that you get over the phone? That's the most important part of this, because you're wanting to set appointments over the phone, and getting to the house is the toughest part of what we do. What's an objection or a challenge that you have over the phone?
They expected to get a quote right there on their computer. They didn't expect an agent to call.
Okay. Ted brought up a good point. We may buy a lead vendor and they say, I expected a free life insurance quote on the spot while I was online, and I did not expect any agents to call me. Okay. Well, I'm sorry that you were a little deceived in a way. But I'm going to be in your area anyway. I'll have that free quote ready, and I'll just pop by and drop it off for a quick second. And they say, well, I don't want anybody coming out. Okay, well, what were you looking for? Well, why did you look into this? And so you can kind of build some trust, ask some questions, and kind of funnel them to either let you give them a quote on the spot or get in front of them. If you just, sympathize and agree, the customer's always right, and you make the attempt to at least get in the home or give them what they're looking for. One thing I like to use is they say, well, I've got 20 calls so far. I understand. Well, let's take 5 minutes so that you don't have to answer your phone anymore. You don't have to deal with 600 insurance agents calling you. I represent over 100 companies. Let's talk for 3 or 4 minutes so that you don't have to talk to anybody else. Let's just end this nightmare of a situation that you're in. And just talk to them. Be sensible, be respectful, but obviously be direct and try to get what we want.
Do you ever use the we want to personalize it for what your specific needs is? Do you ever use that direction, or?
Yeah, if I need to, absolutely. Sometimes they'll say, well, give me a quote. Well, I will. Okay, I will. Let me ask you a couple of questions, because unfortunately, until I ask a couple of questions, I can't just give you a quote, because there's 100 companies, and I don't know which one's best for you yet. So, yeah. Alrighty. Hope everyone enjoyed today's call and learned something. Again, today was overcoming challenges and objections and barriers and walls that come over as a new agent or a struggling agent. Even experienced agents have these happen. Hope everybody has a phenomenal week. Let's make a ton of sales. If you have questions or concerns, please get with me. We'll start our one-on-ones here in about 8 minutes with Ted first. And I emailed out the one-on-one schedule again for today, so we'll get together and go over last week's numbers and what we can do to improve. So everybody have a phenomenal week. Thank you so much for joining the call, and I'll talk to all of you at some point today. Thanks everybody for joining the call. See you guys.
Bye.
Have a great week.